Sinead O'Connor was a guiding light for me emerging into adulthood in Ireland in the Troubles. Her truth, authenticity and fierce sense of justice helped sing into being my moral, political and spiritual compass. She strengthened me. She made me dance. She made me sing. May she rest in peace. May her God accept her in a loving embrace. Gur míle máragat Sinead, McGraw who, fight the real enemy.
She's gone. It's hit us all. Sinead O'Connor was the Banshee warrior queen of Generation X. She was the shrieking, snarling, tender voice of justice for the vulnerable, the wounded, the brave. She was raw in a way that women couldn't be, especially famous women. Nothing like it had been heard before. If you don't know what I'm talking about, YouTube her singing Bob Marley's War unaccompanied, tiny and alone to an angry crowd at the 1992 Bob Dylan tribute. It's spine-tingling Banshee. Gen X, the Pluto in Virgo generation. Pluto's job in Virgo is to bring chaos to order, smash the illusion of perfection, expose where hypocrisy hides behind purity. It strips the rules back to bare bones. No God, no master. Access is as good as ownership. Property is theft. We were born with Pluto conjunct Uranus and hit our 20s in the 1980s and early 90s. Shaved head, docs, baggy t-shirt. We weren't hippies like the boomers before us. We were punks. Do it yourself, rip it up, make it happen. Girls can do anything. Sinead O'Connor, Ari Up, Bjork, Tracy Emin, all Gen X's. All punk attitude. So I wanted to look back at Sinead O'Connor's chart for some clues into her power, her legacy and her gift. She was born the 8th of December 1966 in Dublin, and if the time is right, it's 7:37 a.m. Here's her sun. In Sag, adventurous, idealistic, a seeker. She has the moon in Libra. Equality, beauty, truth. If this birth time is correct, the moon is in the 10th house. Emotionally vulnerable, sensitive to the masses, and asking to be loved. And the moon is tightly conjunct Vesta and Quarrel. Ixion's here, not far off either. And this is the first big clue into that passion she has as a warrior queen. Vesta is a flame that can never die. Wherever she is in your chart, you have a link to your spiritual nourishment, the sacred fire that burns in you. Vesta's also a goddess of service and sacrifice, so she's linked to themes of exploitation, abuse and trafficking. Quarrel is a dwarf planet, and it's our first non-gendered planet. The story goes that Quarrel sang and danced all existence from primordial chaos into a natural order and harmony. Quarrel is that glorious metaphysical point and process where the all creates chaos for the purpose of shaping it into material form. And that's from Richard Brown, the astrologer, not Richard Brown, my buddy. So Quarrel here, right on the moon, it's about joy, it's the spark of creation, it's the dance of life. But Quarrel is also a signifier for being placed under a microscope or lost in the big picture. And that is very much what happened to Sinead. Looking at her chart, one of the big things you can see are all these dramatic red lines. And this is a T-square. It's a multiple T-square. It's a bit of a shocker. One of the characteristics of Gen X is this Pluto-Uranus conjunction that most of us were born with. It represents the beginning of a really powerful and potent new cycle. The last time these two got together was the 1850s, and the next time it'll happen will be the 22nd century. When these two outer planets get together, it's rebellious, it's controversial, it's surgical, it's relentless. Uranus conjunct Pluto is compelled to disrupt power structures on a generational level. On a personal level, it gives a driving intensity and the ability to regenerate after annihilation. There's a lot of power and chaos and trauma that can be experienced when you've got these two conjunct in your birth chart. Opposite Pluto and Uranus, we have Chiron and Saturn here in Pisces. Chiron being the wounded healer, and Saturn being about structures and rules and laws. So this looks at a deep wound with authority. There's a sense that she's been let down terribly, rejected and abandoned. Chiron is the wound that won't heal. It has to be integrated. And in this, she has to find her own sense of authority because it's not going to be reflected well from the outside. In fact, it's going to come on like a ton of bricks because of these two. The positive part of this is that Saturn gives Chiron a place of structure, a unique sense of determination, and really challenge control and traditions. In her case, it can represent a wound from the church. Chiron in Pisces survives victimhood with a strong belief in justice and compassion and equality. It can be rebellious and outspoken to protect where laws and governance has failed. So you can see a bit of a theme here. And then all of this is being sent down to Venus, here in the first house in Sag. Her spiritual values and her feminine expression is both shaped and punished by these big energies. She has to split off her softness and project that war cry just to be able to survive, because this is a lot of pressure. She would be very hard on herself. She's argumentative, righteous, and extreme for the right cause. This point in her chart is fully activated when she ripped up the picture of the Pope in 1992. But we'll get to that in a minute. So what we've got going on here is this intense sensitivity and a huge flush of creativity and dance and voice and protest pouring through her, down from chaos to bring it to form. She can't help herself from fighting against oppression or where there's hypocrisy. The other thing she has here is his palace, and it's opposite Mars. Mars is in Libra, where it wants to fight for justice, where it wants to fight for peace. It's more Banshee energy all through it. Both Pallas and Mars are gods of war, and opposite each other, it's a sliding scale between thought before action and action before thought. But it's a fearless combination of bravery and skill. Something else here in her birth chart, she has Neptune conjunct Mercury in the 12th house in Scorpio. It's really creative, it's transcendental. It's a vision and a dream and an imagination that kind of comes from the depths of some mystical experience. She is otherworldly. But these two here can also be an indication of that struggle she had with mental health. It's really hard in this place to hold and earth all of that energy pouring through her moon placement. So she could be feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders at any given moment, and especially when she's expressing her creativity. This part of her would not be seeking fame, would prefer to be out of the limelight so that she can create and find that voice in a spiritual place. You can see a trauma imprint in her chart, but we've also got the beautiful support that Neptune gave to that T-square. Neptune here is sextile Pluto and Uranus and trine Saturn and Chiron. It's an aspect pattern that shows real talent, an ability to design and create and manifest it through. This little aspect here really gave her a discipline and a hope and a unique voice arising from a collective pain. What a force. So here she is, like a Joan of Arc of Gen X. Her career was absolutely at stratosphere level in October 1992, when she ripped up a photo of the Pope on American TV in protest at the systemic child abuse perpetuated by the Catholic Church. And it turns out she was right. It was one of the world's biggest, most comprehensive cancels to match Kanye. She was universally dumped, savagely criticised, scolded for it. She said later that she was glad she lost her career over it. Fight the real enemy defined her. And to honour her fierceness, let's have a quick look at that chart. Okay, so it was the 3rd of October in 1992. That's her birth chart in the centre. There's her Sun and Venus. There's that T-square. And on the outside in green, we've got the transits of that day. We've just been talking about this Neptune-Mercury placement, and I didn't get to talk about Ixion before, but Ixion is a centaur and is the rebel. Very cheeky, very anti-authority, and an energy that really beats to the sound of its own drum. So Ixion, she was born with it up here near her moon, but here it is in 1992 on this day of her protest. Ixion is there opposite Neptune, and at the same time we have Quirrell opposite Mercury. So what we get here is like a flood of the ancestors moving through her, moving through in a Neptunian way. It's almost coming out like crystal unconsciously. It's a fierceness and a rebellion. And wherever Neptune is, you suffer a loss. You have to have a sacrifice. So here that rebelliousness brought about the sacrifice of a life out in public and essentially pulled her back into the 12th house. At the same time that Ixion and Quirrell are opposite Neptune and Mercury, we've got transiting Mercury on her Vesta, Quirrell and moon. So it just makes this really intense, this fierce sense of justice she was compelled to express. What makes it life-changing though, as far as the astrology goes? That pinpoint here of the T-square, Venus, the North Node was transiting that on that day. And Pallas, there for justice, is right behind it. Transiting North Node brings about a peak experience. It highlights and pours energy through this point. So everything that was banked up here just got shot out. And she was attacked really because what she was saying and doing was so controversial for a woman. It also means that this nodal axis where the nodes were on that day, Pluto and Uranus were square the nodes, and so was Saturn and Chiron, forming a grand cross across those nodes. This is a very divisive and decisive point for her. There's all this pressure to pull her off the path that she was travelling on and reset it. Pluto and Uranus in the 9th house is being really intense about your beliefs. And these two, Saturn and Chiron in Pisces, it's literally a story of how authorities abuse children in the church system. At the same time, transiting Saturn is also square her natal nodes. There it is in the middle of Taurus, and here's Saturn just approaching the middle of Aquarius. It's a little bit off, but by the time Saturn did cross this point and make the exact figure, that trajectory of her career was really done. There's a real karmic pivot point that came up in that incident for her, but I look at this and although it was really awful for her, I don't see in this that she would regret it for a minute. Thank you, Sinead, for being the Banshee that broke through all those barriers. Wherever you are now, I wish you the greatest peace. Fight the real enemy. I'm Meryl Key, and this is my mystery school. If you'd like to support my channel, give me a like, a follow, a share, or a subscribe. Find me on Instagram at my_mystery school or on my website www.merylkey.com. Thanks for watching.